As you may have seen by now, a lot of people report to regretting Cyno when they pull for him, and so this character has built a generally negative set of reviews across the internet no matter where you look. Because of that, I believe a video like this is warranted, where I'm going to give you guys an honest, in-depth review of Cyno for his upcoming rerun banner in patch 3.5. As someone who has played quite a bit of Cyno, I'm going to give you guys my honest thoughts on his place in the meta, as well as give you guys the source of this sort of frustration with the character and misconceptions with regards to his kit, his power level, team comps where he shines, and also how to get the most value out of a character like Cyno. First things first, Cyno is a character who can basically get a lot of different mixed reviews based on what you're actually using with this character and how you are piloting him. The reason for this is because of how his kit works and how there's a lot of room for error. Before we even get into his power level, the first thing you need to acknowledge is that he has a very specific way he needs to be played. You have to use him inside of his burst, which has a long duration and is something that you don't want to be swapping out of. In fact, you can have basically 100% uptime on your burst because of the way it extends when you use your elemental skill inside of it, hitting these eyes as they appear on your screen repeatedly to ensure the maximum amount of damage on your Cyno. And so because of that, not only can you not swap out of your Cyno for a long time, meaning you have to set this character up before you swap into him, this also means that a lot of things can go wrong. First of all, if you don't have enough energy recharge, this character will feel very lackluster, as you'll have to farm energy, wait for his burst, and do basically no damage at all without his elemental burst being up. Secondly, and more importantly, you have to hit the eyes that appear on your screen every single time they do. Well, this can feel like second nature for a experienced Cyno player. For someone new who may not know this, you can kind of feel like your damage isn't that high. If you miss even 1 or 2 eyes in a rotation, your damage will be significantly lowered, as a great part of Cyno's damage comes from his elemental skills that are being perfectly timed. Because of that, you need to know what you're doing, timing your elemental skills when you see the eyes, and performing optimal combos to maximize your damage. If that wasn't enough, he can be clunky at times. For example, not being able to swap out of him for a long time means that you can't refresh some characters' abilities like Fischl's Oz after it expires, or even Nahida's skill to apply Dendro on an enemy after, let's say, you clear an enemy. What this can mean in practice is that if you're fighting many waves of enemies and you set everything up for one enemy, you might have to swap out of your Cyno to set up for the next enemy so that you're not just doing raw electro damage, especially if you're pairing him with a character like Nahida who needs to mark every single enemy. While there are many ways to play around this and you can play other support characters for certain types of content, it can make Cyno feel a bit clunky at times, especially if you would want to swap out of him, but in doing so you can kind of ruin the rotation, the flow of it, especially if you don't want to use his burst for one enemy if, let's say, there are 4 waves of enemies. Another very big misconception with this character is actually regarding his teams. While Cyno can be a bit flexible in what teams he can run, I believe to get the most value out of this character, you need to first of all be running him with a Dendro support like Nahida, Yao Yao, or the main character, all of them being pretty good, and at least one of these options with the Traveler is accessible to every single player. The reason for this is because you can proc incredibly powerful Dendro plus Electro reactions, such as Quicken, which lets you aggravate, and Hyper Bloom if you pair Cyno with a Hydro support as well. While many people know about these teams, I feel like aggravate teams don't perform as well as Quick Bloom or Hyper Bloom teams, Quick Bloom being when you pair Quicken with Hyper Bloom, as Cyno can get incredible amounts of value from a Hyper Bloom or Quick Bloom oriented team, given how his kit works. In fact, while aggravate is perfectly viable, and we'll talk about it later, there are just flat out better options with, for example, Kaching, who's available on the standard banner, who is easy to play, easy to swap out of, and is a very strong character that I honestly think makes people regret Cyno when they use him in the same role as her. Where he does shine in a more unique sense though is, as I said, when being paired with Hyper Bloom. The reason for this is the following. First of all, Cyno's a character who naturally will stack a lot of elemental mastery because of passive talents that will increase his damage based on EM, as well as elemental mastery buffing not only his aggravate damage, but also his Hyper Bloom damage, especially if you are proccing both of them. On top of that, his signature weapon also will buff his attack based on his elemental mastery, and as you saw, since his attacks, both his normal attacks and his elemental skills are just these pretty big amounts of AoE electro damage, with his skill having an exceptionally, I guess, large area of effect, this makes proccing Hyper Blooms very easy for him passively as he's dealing damage. This means that even if you're running a slow Hydro support, someone like Barber or Kokomi, who typically don't provide that much damage to a team other than the utility they give, they can actually give your Cyno free passive damage by allowing him to constantly Hyper Bloom at set intervals because of the way Dendro reactions work. In fact, since you're applying Dendro and Electro to an enemy, they will be quickened, and then you can just proc as many aggravates as you want, increasing your Cyno and maybe another Electro character's damage for a good aggravate team. However, what is oftentimes overlooked is the amount of free damage you can gain by adding a Hydro character in this team. A slow Hydro character like Barber or Komi can allow your Cyno to proc as many aggravates as possible while still getting some passive Hyper Blooms and make a pretty decent team. A faster Hydro applier like Yelan or Xingqiu can not only give you a ton of single target damage, but also give you a bunch of Hydro application, allowing you to proc as many Hyper Blooms as possible while still still getting a decent amount of aggravates. Now do note, if your hydro application is too fast, you won't proc aggravates as much as with a slow hydro applier, but you will make up for it, in my opinion, by hyperblooming more and by dealing more single target damage with your very strong hydro damage dealing supports like Yelan or Xingqiu, who are absolutely broken. If that was enough, I believe Yelan is a perfect fit for Cyno, because while her hydro application is pretty fast, it isn't too fast. A C0 Yelan's hydro application is not as fast as Xingqiu's, even if he isn't C6 by the way, to where you can honestly still proc a good amount of aggravates. Like genuinely, in my experience, Cyno still aggravates a good amount with Yelan, while also gaining way more damage because of Yelan's insane scalings. As you can see on her burst, she just does so much damage, while also buffing your on-field character's damage the longer they're on field, while also being able to run a supportive weapon like either Elegy for the End or the Favonius Warbow, which everyone has access to. Now obviously, Xingqiu can work here too. His damage is even higher than Yelan's, but he applies more hydro, which makes the team a bit more hyperbloom oriented than quick bloom, but I don't want this to be too confusing. So point is, Cyno with a Dendro and hydro support is typically going to be a very strong team, with the last slot being very flexible, although it's usually another Electro option. And so I personally believe Cyno is a character who isn't naturally easy to play. A character like Raiden Shogun, for example, while there can be some nuance to her kit, can see a lot of value by just using her burst, spamming normal and charge attacks, regenerating energy to your whole team, and not having to think about much else. Cyno, on the other hand, is someone who needs a strict rotation. You need to hit your combos, hit your elemental skills whenever you can. Now, lastly, I want to add another con to this section, as this section is sort of naturally turning into a pros and cons, which is regarding Cyno's personal damage. The reason why I believe his aggravate teams aren't as good as like Keqing's aggravate teams are because his numbers just aren't as high, and Keqing can swap out more often. This means that Cyno, despite his higher difficulty to at least learn the combos, can feel less rewarding than even a standard banner character like Keqing at times, as her damage is just really good, and Cyno obviously isn't a meta-defining character, he's just a pretty good DPS option. With that said though, I believe hyperbloom teams or quick bloom teams are definitely the way to go and make him shine much more, and even if you lose out on some quickens by applying too much hydro, it's worth it because a character like Yelan is overall a better character than even someone like Cyno. She's just broken, and same with Xingqiu, so maximizing their damage and building a team around powerful supports with Cyno being the driver can make the team feel really good, in part because of how broken those characters are, but also, to be fair, in part because of Cyno's inherent synergies with those characters, his EM scaling, and ability to proc aggravate and hyperbloom at the same time very easily. And so that's sort of a pros and cons rundown, a rundown of misconceptions, and my more unfiltered thoughts on this character as a whole. With that said, should you pull for him? Do I regret Cyno, and do I think you will regret him? Well, obviously the answer is it depends, but let me elaborate on it. While I don't think Cyno is a needed meta-defining DPS, he can definitely be a strong one if played correctly and invested into. This is a no-brainer, and I feel like everyone should know this. Cyno can definitely clear any content in the game if you have a good team and know how to use him and are hitting all of your eyes as they do appear. Do note though that his playstyle is definitely unique, and you need to enjoy it to actually not regret the character. If you enjoy quick swap teams and want to play someone like Keqing, or want to pull for another meta DPS, then do that. But if you like Cyno's playstyle, you're okay with being on field with him and learning the eye timings and optimal rotations for the character, and already have a good team built, or you're going to build a good team around him, as I believe without that his damage is a lot lower, then he can definitely be a good unit worth getting for you that I don't think you will regret. If on the contrary, his playstyle doesn't suit you, or you just want to pull for the most meta options out there, then I think it's more worth it to pull for supports that can be used in every team, like Nahida, Yelan, Kazuha, or pretty much any of the Hydro 5 stars. So how happy you will be with this character is subjective to you. For more advice regarding this character, and more, I guess, bonus pros and cons with regards to his builds and teams, here are the following things I want to say. For his build, it is incredibly versatile. While I am the biggest advocate for a 4 Thundering Fury Cyno, as it gives you more damage, more energy, more fun combos, and is generally an easy set to farm as you can get it from the strongbox, you can pretty much go for so many different sets like Gilded Dreams, Gladiator, mix and matching 2-piece sets, or even 4-piece Thunder Soother. Because of that, he can be a very easy character to build, while also having a pretty unique playstyle with this artifact set that will actually change his combo. As you'll see, I'll put my combos from my last video on screen now, and be sure to check out my ultimate Cyno guide for more detailed information if you want to actually know how to play him. But I believe the ease of building him is definitely a strong suit, and the same can mostly be said about his weapons. In fact, while his signature 5-star weapon is definitely a worthwhile upgrade if you want to pull on a weapon banner, or if you have it, the fact that he can use pretty much any single crit pull on that you may have, and even have free-to-play options that aren't terrible, like even the White Tassel, which usually seems pretty bad on characters, but since Cyno scales on Elemental Mastery a lot and can get away with the low base attack more than certain other characters and use its effect, it can actually make a decent free-to-play option, while also having many different weapons that you can upgrade to if you do choose to pull for them, or depending on what you have on your account. He also has upgrades like his second Constellation, which gives him a lot more damage, while still being perfectly viable at C0. And so those are my general thoughts thoughts on Cyno. I believe he gets unfairly rated a lot, but I also don't think he's meta defining. Keep those two things in mind, and keep in mind his playstyle and teams, and know that they're good enough and quite strong if you want to use them, but you need to actually want to play that sort of playstyle, and you also need to know that they aren't meta defining. Characters like Keqing are standard characters that you can use instead, or you can use meta defining characters like obviously Xiangling or Dendro focused teams in general. Keep that in mind. Not a must pull, but a pretty decent DPS if you want him, like his playstyle, and are playing him efficiently, as I believe without that you can be disappointed if you don't really know what you're signing up for. That is why I believe he's gotten misrated so much, and I don't want to overhype or underhype a character. I really want to give you guys my honest thoughts. So that's pretty much it. Hope I did a good job at that. I don't want you guys to think he's stronger than he is. He's just pretty decent if you are using him correctly, which I believe a lot of people aren't, but obviously don't expect him to like break the game in any way. Personally, I've been hyped for him since before he came out, as I do really like his design, so he's not someone that I personally regret, but I do personally find myself using him and enjoying him a lot more with Thundering Fury in a quick bloom team. That's where I have fun with this character, whereas when I played Aggravate, I more so felt like, hey, Keqing is more fun because I get to quick swap. So that's just my take in case you wanted to hear it. With that said, I don't want to ramble, I don't want to repeat myself, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I do want to remind you guys that I stream outside on Twitch, link in the description if you want to catch me live. If there's anything new I want to add or forgot in this video, as I am human, it will be in a pinned comment, so be sure to check that. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Look at how fast I'm clearing it. First of all, swirl, electro, swap the Cyno, your penises do, and then we perfectly time the TF rotation. We get our and then we yep. Now we hit the eye right here as it appears. You see that? I hit it even before it appeared. So you guys are like, wait, how did you do that? As I do right now.